would you be good enough to tell us a bit about your background, where you come from, and how you made a decision to join the military and to serve your country?
Absolutely. I grew up all over the country. My parents were both federal law enforcement officers with the National Park Service, so kind of born into the whole society of public service. It was always very important to our family. Went to undergraduate college at the College of William and Mary in Virginia and got a bachelor's degree in sociology with a minor in anthropology. While I was there, I was very involved in student activism, was elected student body president for my senior year, worked very, very hard on issues of reforming sexual assault policies, fair trade, working with our college employees to set up a living wage campaign to help get them unionized and everything. So, you know, did all the whole protest gamut and everything, and then graduated, spent about a year in the workforce, and found it very difficult to find work. I previously interned with Amnesty International's Mid-Atlantic Regional Office between my junior and senior year, and I spent a couple months working on Ralph Nader's 2004 Presidential Exploratory Committee, and that was pretty much it. You know, outside of that, you know, I didn't have enough money to afford graduate school at the time, and I was in desperate need of health insurance because having graduated, it was no longer covered by my parents. And with the war in Iraq becoming so pivotal in what was going on in my generation, kind of like the Vietnam War was for, you know, your generation and my parents' generation, all of these things sort of kind of just, you know, culminated together, and I made the decision, a very informed decision, unlike many of my fellow soldiers. I did a lot of research and decided to join the U.S. Army, and the only job I was considering doing was that of public affairs as a broadcast journalist, despite them saying they had no idea what that job was and that it wasn't available. My persistence, you know, paid off. But the Army was definitely a lifestyle change. I mean, coming from academia and coming from, you know, kind of liberal activism and enlisting, you know, with a college degree, which only makes up, I think, 3% of the enlisted military have college degrees. It's 3 or 9, I can't remember which. Being a strict vegetarian, all these things, you know, just kind of was very different, but I did, you know, learn to adjust. I think pulling from my background, you know, I was able to kind of keep myself in a good frame of mind, and, you know, having been through a lot of hardships before in my life, this was, you know, just one more thing, and I was kind of determined myself too to prove that this was something that I could do, you know, as a person and as a woman. You know, I kind of always tossed around the idea of doing it just to prove that I could, but it also, and I was, you know, staunchly opposed to the war when I joined, so, you know, that's another wrench in the socket there. People didn't quite understand. But when I did join and was assigned to an infantry unit, I was with the 1st Brigade Combat Team with the 101st Airborne Division, and then, you know, went to Iraq and spent a year there. I was opened up to a lot of issues that I did not really understand fully or didn't even know existed when I was on the outside protesting the war, which I did quite frequently. And it's very easy to understand kind of the superficial issues, you know, the issues of human casualties, which are absolutely not superficial, but you know, what you see on the media. But then there's a lot of underlying issues that, unless you're really either in the military or heavily involved with, you know, military issues, you don't really think about issues like stop loss, which are now, you know, making it into the mainstream dialogue. But even now, most people don't understand what exactly that is because Hollywood has not portrayed it accurately. So things like that, things like, you know, underrepresentation of class status within the military. I mean, basically, we have a military built upon the backs of the poor. And, you know, trying to get reform within that is just something that's very hard to do. And then the whole issue of medical access and veterans issues just kind of opened my eyes and gave me a whole new venue to focus my energies. And now that I am a veteran, I am trying to, you know, keep with a lot of the old issues I worked on, but also start working with some of these veterans issues. I'm going to start graduate school at University of California, Berkeley in journalism in the fall, and I'm continuing to work with the organization, the Appeal for Redress, which I helped found, which is still working to protect the rights of active duty service members.
Would you talk to us for a minute or two about what that experience was like for women in the military today?
Absolutely. For me, I think my gender was a very big hurdle to overcome when I was first assigned to my unit. My public affairs office was made up of 4 people, an officer in charge, a non-commissioned officer in charge, 2 men, and 2 junior ranking soldiers, myself and another female. And that was it for the entire 4,000 person brigade. And because of our job, we were the ones who had to be out all the time taking pictures, doing video. So I was around the infantry and other combat arms consistently. And when I first got to the unit, the Army had just completed their transformation process, so a lot of these soldiers were first seeing female faces, you know, outside of the hospital or, you know, the maintenance bay or whatever for the first time. And so it really did take a second for them to kind of understand, you know, who I was. But I think, again, drawing from my past, my persistence and my commitment to really doing my job 100% is what really paid off, because I was able to show to these soldiers, both, you know, junior level, you know, PFCs and specialists, and upper level, you know, sergeant majors and colonels, that I could carry my own weight. Literally, I carried more weight than all of them because of all my camera equipment. And that I wasn't going to get in their way. I knew exactly what I was doing, you know, and I was willing to work with them. And once, it took about a little under a year before we were deployed, but once they were able to realize and be comfortable with me, gender really no longer became an issue, except that my officer, my boss, would argue that the gender actually played to my advantage, because I was able to kind of weasel my way into missions that, you know, they might not have let other journalists go on, because, you know, I knew them and, you know, was able to be friendly with them. But I never personally faced any type of sexual harassment outside of catcalling, which at this point I just learned to ignore. Again, probably because of my job. I was a very high-profile female. I was involved in media relations, so people pretty much knew, and I knew almost all of the high-ranking officials, so no one was going to mess with me if they wanted to live. But I did know quite a few females who had some real problems with sexual harassment. Obviously is the main one. Sexual abuse is also a problem, especially in Iraq with such close quarters, not much oversight, nowhere for anyone to go. And with the problem of you know, illegal steroid use, smuggling in of alcohol and drugs, you know, you had a lot of that fueling into an already high impact, you know, sort of atmosphere and high testosterone atmosphere for the men. It really does, you know, play into this, and so there were definitely cases of that. Another issue was that of prostitution, both female soldiers doing it and also female civilians. And so the whole issue of gender and sex in the military, and especially in a combat zone, is just so completely distorted, and it's such a dangerous situation that's evolving, and I don't think a lot of people really understand to the extent that it's happening.